Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast. This is your host, Ben Toomby, joined by your co-host, Ian Hawks. Welcome, brother.
Hey, Ben. It's good to be here today. Excited to dive into this topic.
Yeah, so for those who listened into our last episode, which was about performance anxiety and performance challenges and ways to mitigate some of those pieces, we brought up oral sex as one of the primary tools that we encourage brothers to use while they're, working on whatever issues are coming up, and also alleviating some of the pressure, the performance pressure. And in this episode, after we got off the last one, we were saying, man, it would have been great to dive in a little bit deeper. And we do have, a very extensive oral mastery course within our program. But today we want to give listeners a basic toolkit for becoming masters of oral sex. And Hawks, as you are the brother that built the oral mastery course, I would love to turn things over to you here with the question, for any brother who is just stepping into upgrading his sexual software, let's say, receiving the next level of sex education around oral mastery, what would you advise him in how to get started showing up in a more masterful way?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is understanding that there's a systematic approach that can be taken, which is nice to know for men. And it's not to say that this is a step-by-step recipe that's going to work every time, but in general, there are ways to approach, any form of sex with a woman that are going to set you up for success and allow her to gradually open into the expansive experience of higher states of pleasure and orgasm. And so I'd love to provide a little bit of that roadmap for anyone out there who's curious to know, like, how can I approach this in a really, harmonious way that's going to work with my partner's body, that's going to work to allow her to open up. And before even getting into that, what feels important to start this conversation with is addressing some of the blocks and the barriers that could be there, because oral sex is something that some couples don't even engage with, and there can be reasons for that. So let's talk a little bit about, common blocks and barriers first and foremost.
Yeah, what would you say is the number one most common block we see in the men that we serve?
I'll speak about it, the cultural programming that might be there around oral sex specifically. This idea that it's dirty or unclean. And for the women, actually, it's not uncommon for a woman to be self-conscious of having a man go down on her. It's a very vulnerable place to be. And if a woman has experienced some criticism or teasing earlier on in her life around the scent of her fluids, the scent of her yoni, that's likely to play a factor in her ability to really open up and receive that. And some couples are actually just in this belief, no, we don't do oral sex. We don't like that. And so if that's you, getting really curious about why is that? For a man, if there's a block in your partner, if she thinks that she doesn't want to receive oral sex, there's probably something at play there that's a self-conscious pattern. And it's the man's, responsibility, and actually it's within his power to really support his partner in letting go of that self-consciousness. And so there's a lot we can do as men to encourage our partner to trust that, hey, I love going down on you. Your pussy smells amazing. I love the taste of your fluids. This is a gift to be able to give this to you. And of course, we want to be speaking truthfully and authentically. And so then we can also address from the man's perspective, if you have barriers to going down on your partner, if you feel like it's unclean or you don't like the scent or smell, There's there's a there's some simple things that we can do just right out of the gate. Of course, cleanliness is important in these situations, and finding like finding a playful and organic way to let your partner know that you're going to go down on her, that you really want to go down on her, giving her a little heads up so that she knows, like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm going to have a shower. Or you could just you could draw your partner a bath and let her know, like, hey, baby, I want you to soak in the tub. And when you get out, I got something special for you. And, or even just engaging in a shower together. It's like, hey, I'd love to be intimate with you. Let's have a shower together and just see where that goes. So that's like just that's not getting to the deeper layers that could be there. There can be biological factors at play that could cause unpleasant scents to come from the pussy, and that's not really like what we're going to dive into. I would just mention that it can be equally the man's part and responsibility if the scent of your partner's yoni is off. There's something called bacterial vaginosis that is one of the common culprits for that, like, kind of cliche fishy smell. And just knowing right out of the gate that actually men can carry that as well. It's just asymptomatic. It doesn't show up as a scent for men, but they can give it to their partners. And there are also health factors at play there. So the healthier we are, the more vital we are, the healthier our diet and nutrition is. Our sexual fluids for men and women will also, carry that. That will be representative of our overall health and vitality. So just I'll leave it at that in terms of some of the deeper things that could be at play. There are ways that we can shift the microbiome for the sex organs in positive ways. If something is a little off, that might be worth looking into. But first and foremost, like, really for men to learn to love your partner's scent, learn to love her fluids if you don't already, and encourage her to to trust that that is an enjoyable place for you to be. And that's getting to this first element of, like, the orgasmic arc, which is safety. It's got to start with safety. And I'd love to actually, just feels appropriate to move through some of the orgasmic arc sequence as laid out by the author. I believe her author name is just Genevieve, and she has a great book called The Orgasmic Arc. And that's a great place to for men especially to go, and women, to understand what is the process of opening up to experience an orgasm. Is there are certain steps that need to be made and established, and safety being the very first one of them. If we're not grounded in safety, and especially for a woman, if she's not grounded in safety in her body and her environment with her partner, then there's going to be a lot of resistance in her body to actually opening up to the subsequent stages that will eventually lead her to an orgasm. So addressing some of those blocks and barriers is a good place to start. And then with safety as well, creating an environment and a setting that your partner feels really comfortable in. This is, again, it's really important for women to be able to feel comfortable and safe in their environment. So, is she warm enough? Is there the appropriate amount of privacy available for her to open up and feel really available in those ways? Have you established trust in your relationship? Have you been doing, as a man, have you been doing what you say you're going to do? If you said you were going to take the trash out, did you actually do it? Or are there unclosed loops of your own commitments that are going to fragment your partner's trust in you? And are you showing up and being really present with her and allowing her to feel safe and seen and heard? These are all really important ways that we as men can establish that safety for our partner that will then invite her into the surrender and the trust and the opening that's necessary for her to, really reliably experience an orgasm.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate this last piece around developing and acquiring a taste for your partner. I would say, like a lot of things, like, learning to like drink coffee, or enjoy spicy food, or eat raw oysters. There's like a lot of things in our lives that, or even tomatoes for some people at a young age, we just like were repulsed by something. It tasted terrible. And like with time, we came to develop an appreciation for the more complex flavors. And, like it's an acquired taste, it's a subtlety. And so just wanted to mention that as an additional piece around, really highlighting like authentically going down on your partner and really enjoying it thoroughly, truly, authentically is a key piece here. Because then when you actually are in that space and your authentic expression of that desire to taste her, that's really going to open things up in a whole new way, which like many women may have never been with a man who actually has developed that capacity to actually enjoy eating pussy on a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces you were speaking to there, Ben, about pheromones is interesting. There have been studies done that show there's a natural attraction to body odors when there's a biological compatibility between two partners. So if there's something in the biology and like the physiological makeup of a man, a woman who would benefit, or who her offspring would benefit from that man's biological makeup, there's a natural attraction that she has towards his body odors. And that's like, yeah, that's just an interesting piece that has been studied and shown. And the studies haven't come out to my awareness around sexual fluids and whether there's like a biological compatibility related to attraction to a partner's sexual fluids. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is some truth to that as well. Um, but yeah, just learning to love it as a man, learning to love going down on your partner. And so there some of the external barriers there being scent and taste as a couple of the obvious big ones. The other barrier that I think is there for some men in terms of not really being drawn to go down on his partner could be that he just doesn't really feel confident in it. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. This is part of foreplay, but like I'm kind of lost down there. There's a lot going
Mhm.
on. What do I do? And so that's what a lot of what I'd love to speak to in this podcast is just some basic fundamentals of understanding the terrain and an
Mhm.
approach to take that it's not guaranteed to work every time, but there are systems that we can learn that can provide a bit of a roadmap for us. And then obviously, what's crucial in any sexual experience is being really present and attuned with our partner and reading her signs and cues. Because just because something worked one day doesn't mean it's going to work the same way the next day. Um, so it's really important that we're also there to listen and feel our partner in her experience and respond accordingly. And it's nice to have a bit of a roadmap, regardless. So I would love to just like move on from the safety piece, that this first step, understanding, establishing safety. Is there trust? Is she comfortable? Is there, and actually just asking the question before. I love to ask the question before engaging. Like, is there anything I could do to help you feel more comfortable? And more often than not, there is an answer that comes there,
Mhm.
and it's sometimes just providing that invitation to our partner to actually check in with her body and realize, you know what, actually, I am a little cold. A
Mhm.
blanket would be nice. Um,
Mhm.
or the lighting is a bit bright. Could we turn the lights down? All these little subtle ways that we can create an environment that's really going to nurture that safety. So after safety in this orgasmic arc sequence, we move on to intrigue. And so intrigue is about starting to create that curiosity within your partner for pleasure. Like this starts, we talk about this in the course in multiple different ways, but thinking about like starting from the outside and moving in. And so if your intention is to go down and perform oral sex on your partner, then before you just dive right down into the pussy or the yoni. And a quick note on that, if you're not familiar with the word yoni, that's the Sanskrit word for the female reproductive organs. And the rough translation is temple, like sacred portal of life. And the vulva, the external part of the yoni, being the altar to the temple, which is the vagina, what's inside, and the cervix and the uterus, and all of this actually in that Sanskrit word yoni being like encompassing the energy of this is a sacred place. This is a temple. This is literally where life emerges from. And that shift, I love using the word yoni because it has that energy to it. It's not tainted by some of our English words that have been used in derogatory ways. Pussy is still a great word. I love the word pussy. I think it
Mhm.
carries a very high vibration, at least, when I speak it and in
Yeah.
that intention. But I hear you. It also has been used in other ways. But yeah, so that reframe of treating the yoni as this sacred portal is also the energy that we can bring as men approaching that place in our partner. And that's going to shift a lot if she feels like, oh, he's really treating my pussy as sacred. He's really treating this as the portal of life and a sacred temple. Like, how would you enter, a temple? It's with care. It's gentle. You're, taking your shoes off before you enter, and you're
Mhm.
bowing in reverence before you enter, and you go with a calm, slow pace, and you're there to worship. And so, really approaching the pussy as a place of worship is the energy that we can bring as men. That I feel we must bring as men, and our woman will feel that. So,
Yeah, and the whole act of this being like a form of prayer, like truly making this an art piece, like
yeah,
or a musical piece, thinking of it in that way, which
yeah.
you speak to, I know is another connected piece to that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we can circle back around to that later on. But I want to continue with intrigue here. So thinking about we're creating intrigue, we're provoking curiosity and an openness to little glimmers of pleasure that our partner could feel. And so we're starting from the outside in, starting with the lips and the neck, and bringing that sensual touch to her body that's really helping her to get into her body and realize like, okay, I'm being invited into something pleasureful. Can I, let's see, am I open to that? Am I available to that? And we can slowly coax her into that by moving from the outside in, and moving to the breasts, after kissing, and after the neck, and other parts of the body, like eventually moving to the breasts, which is another great way to invite that opening in a woman, and moving from the outside to the inside on the breasts, and all of this to say we're slowly moving towards the yoni, but we're not just diving right into the yoni from step zero. It's allowing that intrigue to build so that by the time we actually get down to her pussy, she's like, yeah, this is right. I'm glad you're there. She's not like, oh shit, I'm not really ready for this. So yeah, intrigue. And then when we start to bring our attention and touch to the yoni, we're also working with intrigue. We're not just going right into the clit and hammering on it, like work from the outside in, still with the yoni, with the outer labia, with the mons pubis, with the perineum, like thinking about how do I slowly bring my attention and my touch from the outside in so that by the time you actually get to the inner labia or the clit, you've already been building this intrigue within her, and it's teasing. She's anticipating it and she wants it. There needs to be that desire build up before that pleasure can be really fully experienced. And so actually creating some anticipation and some teasing is a massive way to allow our partner to actually experience the pleasure that can be there when we when we do bring that touch to those highly erogenous zones. And this is all like basic foreplay, I appreciate you bearing with us. If you're like, hey, this is all, I've heard this 100 times, I'm aware of this, but it's just important if we're going to talk about this topic to at least provide those foundations of safety and intrigue. And then, so let's get to directionality, which is the next part. So providing that we've taken those first couple of steps appropriately, and she's excited for us to be down there with her yoni, and now we're bringing that first lick to her full vulva. And the vulva is the external part of the of the female sex organ. It's the lips and the clit, and that first lick can be like a first kiss, like the first time you kiss someone that you've been courting for a little while, and that anticipation has been building up. Are you just going to dive right in and start making out really hard? Probably not. You might get to that during that first kiss, but the first time your lips touch, it's slow, it's gentle, it's really intentional. And so allowing that first lick to be like a first kiss, and just running it across the entire length of the vulva, and just barely, like, also being aware that the clit is highly sensitive, and until she's been appropriately warmed up, too much attention to the clitoris too soon is actually going to be uncomfortable. So actually staying away from the clit for the first little bit, or just being really gently teasing with it. And then directionality, this stage is really about providing that direction. So once there's been intrigue, and once she's like experiencing that pleasure, staying with it and building that, allowing it to build gradually. And it's like I'm not going to go into too many specific details, because this could be a really long podcast. And please come and check out the Oral Mastery course. I love that. I'm really happy with how that course turned out, and we've had great feedback from the men who've taken it. But really, directionality, the big piece I would speak to here that I think is really important for men to know, is that what I was speaking to there about the clitoris, we've all heard of the clit. This is like, okay, it's one of the pleasure centers of the yoni. And it's not like just bringing attention to the clit right away is going to work. We want to slowly coax the clitoris into being open to higher levels of sensation. So teasing back and forth between a little bit of touch to the clit, and then going back to the lower part of the vulva, going back to the labia, the inner and outer labia, the perineum, the vaginal entrance, not entering right away either, but just lingering in that area below the clit, and then going back up to the clit and moving back and forth. And you could think about spending 5 seconds on the clit, 5 seconds on the lower part of the vulva, and going back and forth after you've already built that intrigue. That can be one way to approach directionality. If you spend all of your attention on the clitoris too soon, it's going to become like overstimulating, or she'll become numb in that area, and it's not likely to work the way you might want it to. So just understanding that temperance is key in that directionality phase.
Yeah, this is all great, Hawks. I'm really appreciating your ability to distill and give some basic entry level tools and teachings and concepts to guys who are, just getting started in this work right now. And as we've mentioned, like, this is a 4 hours of content within our online course, specifically the Oral Mastery course. So there's a lot here to dive into, but I feel like, we're just hitting every single base just perfectly so far. So what would be the next step for men in the orgasmic arc after directionality?
So in Genevieve's orgasmic arc sequence, what comes after directionality is openness, and openness is the orgasm. So I would say, like, I could speak a little bit more to directionality. What I would encourage after, what I've spoken to already, would be bringing your hands into the equation. The tongue is an incredible sex organ. And if we're going down on our partner using our tongue, we also still have two hands. And so like, let's use those as well, utilize all these parts of ourselves. So one thing that I think is really helpful for a lot of women is bringing that touch with our hands to different parts of her body. If you can reach up to her breasts, then that can provide a lot of stimulation. You know, nipples, like stimulating the nipples and the clit at the same time it's going to magnify the experience. I like to be like observing if my partner is touching her own body in some way, if her hands on her belly or her hands on her breasts. I'm making note of that. And then I'll bring my hand up to that area and be like, oh, she's already like signaling that she would enjoy touch here. She might be happy doing it herself, but she would also probably enjoy it if I did that. So just noticing, like, are your partner's hands moving somewhere in her body? And do you have a free hand that could actually go there and provide that for her? And it could be really grounding to have a hand on her belly, or you can put a little pressure on the belly just above the mons pubis. And that's actually going to like open up the vulva and expose the clit a little more, which can be helpful when you're bringing more intentional stimulation to that area. So there's a lot we can do with our hands, and also having one hand underneath her bum that can help to elevate, to lift the pelvis a little bit, which will help with alignment, just like posturally. And then you're with a free hand. I encourage, if you're right-handed, at some point free up your right hand so that you can actually bring that to her yoni as well. And then at this point, you might explore some internal like penetration with a finger or two fingers. And that can really like amplify the experience as well. If she has something that her internal muscles can also feel and like be grounded by latching onto, while you're also then working the clit and the vulva with your tongue, that's going to be huge. And yeah, at that point, like the directionality piece is, I spoke to like early stages of directionality, moving back and forth between the clit and the lower part of the vulva. But eventually, directionality means persistent, steady action and stimulation. And that can look like consistent full licks of the vulva, from bottom to top to clit, or from middle all the way up to the clit, and just like a dog lapping up water, just continuously just keep going, but wait for her signals to indicate that she is ready for that. And this is where the attunement and observation is crucial. Like, your partner will be giving signals, whether you're aware of it or not. There are signals that she's providing, consciously or unconsciously, that are going to indicate to you her level of openness. One that's pretty obvious is if she's pushing her pelvis into you, that's a good indication she would like more. You could probably increase the pressure, or just keep going with that same pressure. Let her push into you. And at any point, if you're unsure, or if you've been on the clit and she like pulls back a little bit, like that pulling back is a good indication that's a little too much intensity for her in that moment. Then just always coming back to like resting a flat tongue on the vulva. I didn't speak to that early on, but that's actually one of, I think, the best things we can do really early on in oral sex, is just putting the length of our tongue flat against her vulva and just providing that contact. And there are electrical signals that are passing between the vulva and the tongue, and this gets into a little bit more of the esoteric Taoist, like energetic principles, but the tongue is an incredible bridge for chi flow in our body. The yoni is an incredible conductor of bioelectric energy. When we connect those two together, like, you could place your tongue flat against the yoni and not move it at all. At least this is something that I've noticed. And my tongue will often just start twitching and responding and actually moving on its own accord. And I feel the vulva also doing that. And they're like in this dance together where they're just passively moving against each other without any actual like action being taken. So always just actually coming back to a flat tongue against the vulva if you're unsure of what you're doing. Just give a little pause and let your partner then also integrate some of that pleasure. And it's going to keep the connection. It's not going to like, she's not going to all of a sudden dissipate all of her pleasure. It's just allowing her to like reach a level where it can flatten out and she can integrate that energy and then become ready for more. And then she might push into you. And then that's an indication that you can, pick up the pressure and intensity again. So getting back to directionality, the final stages of directionality, if you're, moving towards an orgasm for your partner, once you're in the spot and you're in the pocket, just keep going and don't stop. And that consistency is key because it does require consistent, steady stimulation in order for her to eventually spill over into that next stage in the orgasmic arc, which is referred to as openness, which is the orgasm. It's just this bliss state of all of a sudden that energy, that arousal, that tension that's been building gets to release into this big expansive place of openness. And it requires us as men to be steady, to like keep going. And this is where it can be difficult if you're new to oral sex. It does require some strengthening of your tongue. And so I really encourage men to just make a habit of going down on your partner regularly and keep building that stamina, because the tongue is a muscle and we can strengthen it and condition it and build stamina and dexterity. And that's all going to greatly enhance our ability to provide that experience for our partner. So keep going, be aware of your breath, make sure that when you reach that final stage of directionality, you're in a posture and position that you can maintain. You're in a speed and a level of pressure that you can maintain, and you're able to breathe enough and breathe consistently to just maintain that course and keep going. And then eventually she's going to spill over into that openness stage, which is one of the, it's a glorious place to be for her and for you. So at that point, when she eventually reaches orgasm, if you're practiced enough, you'll feel those contractions. Her pelvic floor is going to go into these spasmodic contractions. It's pretty easy to feel, especially if you have a finger or two inside of her. But some men still miss it. I would say keep going until she has had what you can say is very clearly an orgasm, or she might eventually just put a hand on your head and like let you know, okay, that's enough. Because once she's gone through the orgasm experience, then the clit is going to become hypersensitive again, and actually like it's going to be uncomfortable if you continue stimulating that area. So there is a level of awareness that the man can develop where you're quite sure, where she is in that orgasm process, and we can coax a little bit more out of the orgasm. It's another thing. Like if you stop too soon, she might not fully express that orgasm, but learning to read her signals and her body cues will eventually allow us to know, to be able to orchestrate the perfect orgasm where she gets this full prolonged experience. And right when it's coming to completion, you're releasing that pressure. And then I encourage to just come back to that flat tongue on the vulva. You don't necessarily want to like break contact altogether. It's nice to still have that contact, but you're not moving at all, and certainly not, bringing stimulation to the clit, because she's going to be really sensitive. And at that point, she can pass over into the next stage of the sequence, which is beingness. And that's the pause. It's the stillness, the void after that big expansive opening. And then it's also really, really nice if we can just hold her in that and allow her to be in that blissful space for as long as is right for her. So that's it's really quick. After, and then just to close the loop on the orgasmic arc, after beingness, it comes expression. And so that, we've all likely experienced that post-orgasm giddiness from our partner, a sort of playful, maybe she's talking about ideas that she has, or sometimes tears might even come, emotions could well up, whatever it is, just allowing and inviting that expression from her, because it's a beautiful place. She's just had the best drug in the world, and now she's going to be in this like creative, artistic, authentic expression. And for some women, the expression might just be more stillness and quiet, and she might be like processing things internally. And sometimes there might be hilarious things that she says, and just being there to experience and allow whatever her expression is after the beingness stage is also like a really great and important way for us as men to curate that whole process, because it's not just about the orgasm. It's about the safety and the lead up to the orgasm, and it's about the integration and the aftercare. And that's what sets, a sexually masterful man apart from someone who's great at sex and can, reliably bring his partner to orgasm. But are you really allowing that experience to be everything that it could be for her? And then, of course, after the beingness, expression could also look like continuing. At that point, maybe we're entering her for penetrative sex, which is, in our last podcast when we were speaking about performance anxiety and why oral sex, like a man giving oral sex to his partner, is such an amazing remedy for performance anxiety, because at that point, once she's had an orgasm from our tongue and our hands, we can then bring ourselves up and enter her with our cock and then have pressure-free sex. Like, hey, she's already had an amazing experience. Good job. Good job, bro. Now you can enjoy penetrative sex without that immense pressure. And so, yeah, just like the bow I'll tie on this, and then I'll turn it back to you, Ben, is like becoming masterful with your tongue in oral sex, becoming a cunnilingus master, creates like so much confidence for a man, because you can reliably, skillfully, artfully bring your partner to ecstatic states of pleasure using just your tongue and your hands. And those are going to be ready for you, anytime, regardless of what's going on in your genitals. And reprogramming any fears or anxieties that we have around being able to please our partner to the lived experience of like, yeah, I can reliably, skillfully, artfully please my partner in incredible ways. That's so empowering for so many men and for relationships. And it's a beautiful and important gift that we have to share with our partners as men. I think it is our responsibility to know how and to learn how and to cultivate the ability to bring our partner to great states of pleasure. And it doesn't have to rely on our cock, because genitals can be tricky sometimes. And like you can get there with your cock, but until, giving yourself the spaciousness to learn how to master that part of your body by first mastering the tongue and the hands, which come a little easier in my experience. And women come easier from oral sex. And there's been many studies that have shown that. Like it's a more reliable way for women to be brought to orgasm. Which is interesting and a valuable reframe for some men. It's actually like more women out there are having orgasms from their partner's tongues than penetrative sex. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I love the full orgasmic arc in, really concise, distilled way here, and just again echoing this as a devotional act. We brought up early on showing up in a form of prayer, or like making this an art piece, making this a song, and all the elements you spoke to. And again, there's so many more layers and nuances and things that we could go into than we could cover in a podcast episode. But as you learn to play the different scales and notes and chords, and as you've tuned your own instrument and your own nervous system regulation, your ability to get out of your head and into your body, and to be in training your partner in that, if maybe she's a little in her head, you just continuing to not outsource your groundedness through the whole process and just getting into that flow state, as we spoke to in the last podcast, getting into that ability will all be supportive to this. And just 2 points I wanted to add in here that we hadn't mentioned yet. But one is letting your partner know the intention going into this, that like your intention is to actually just go down on her and not, a lot of times she can get self-conscious about the level of receiving she's in. So I think setting a container and letting her know, like, hey, I want to go down on you. We're going to go down on you for 30 minutes, or even set a timer, so that, or maybe it's an hour, or we're just going to focus on you and your body for this amount of time. If it breaks out and explodes into an orgasm, or she's dying to be penetrated and just pulls you in with her claws, like, that's totally fine. But removing any of the pressure for her to feel like she needs to give you something back, I think, is another valuable piece in this. And then another small point I wanted to bring up was in that moment where she's entering those orgasmic states, and you mentioned not slowing down and keep the cadence going, don't stop. There's another phenomena that us men can sometimes fall into, or I know I've fallen into, which can be, as she's starting to go into orgasm and get excited, oftentimes we can start to get excited, and we can actually, that can unconsciously lead to us like becoming more vigorous, or like speeding things up, that can actually throw her off of the orgasmic state as well. So just maintain exactly what you're doing. Don't slow down. Don't speed up. Would be just another addition I'd add in there. Sometimes speeding up happens. And yeah, all of this, I think, this should be a really helpful toolkit for any brothers tuning in who are just getting started and, upgrading how they're showing up with their partner. And as you said, this piece around this being our responsibility, and us having this valuable piece of our sexual mastery down, so that it removes any of the performance pressure on us or our partner, or it really allows her to open to be ready to penetrate. Like, whatever the case, this will work 10 out of 10 times to support better sex, whether this is just the one thing you do, or whether it does lead to penetration, and so I'm really happy you highlighted that as well. And really well done, Hawks. Really appreciate your presentation on this, and just riffing off the cuff, man. It really speaks to your level of study and skill in this area.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you bringing in the potential for performance pressure to the woman as well. And that is an important piece to name, because that could also be a block. If we're approaching this with the energy of like, oh, like, I'm going to make you come, she might be like, well, that's kind of putting pressure on me. What if I don't orgasm? Then am I letting you down? And so, yeah, I was speaking to this process in the sequence of eventually, she does have an orgasm. But like you said, Ben, also actually really just letting go of that. It's okay to have that as an intention, something that we're, directing ourselves towards. But ultimately, really what we're directing ourselves towards is her pleasure and her openness. And actually that state that stage in the orgasmic arc of openness doesn't mean orgasm necessarily. Openness can look like many different things. Some level of openness can be our intention, and that might be early on, just, as we're starting to peel back those layers, we're able to, allow her to experience just a little more pleasure and a little more like peace and trust in that oral sex experience. Like, if there's been blocks there, if this hasn't been something that is a regular practice for you, just, let it be like whatever. If we're just going a little bit further than we did before, or if she's experiencing something, maybe emotions come up, and that's the openness experience for her. Just like letting that be whatever it is, and not putting that pressure on her that like, hey, once you orgasm, then we're done here, or like that's what this is about. Actually, it's not about that. It's about connection. It's about,
Mhm.
pleasure and being in that energy of worship and honoring our partner and showing our devotion. So yeah, that's like really important to name. Just be wary of putting that performance pressure on your partner.
Mhm.
And yeah, the one last thing I want to leave everyone with is this one last little encouragement in case you're not completely sold yet. The sexual fluids of women, again, going to that Sanskrit term yoni, in the tantric lineages, the fluid of a woman's vaginal secretions is referred to as amrita, which roughly translates to nectar of the gods or nectar of immortality. And in Taoist traditions as well, they refer to this as the jade nectar, which is similarly, carries a similar energy of this fluid, this sacred secretion of immortality, of divinity. And that is an incredible gift that we can receive while providing oral sex. Actually, understanding that by lapping up her sexual fluids, by consuming some of those and allowing our body to integrate with that through our mouth, is enhancing our vitality. It's amplifying our yang essence, because it's carrying this rich, watery yin essence. This is again speaking in Taoist terms and getting a little esoteric here, but I loved learning about this when I first started studying Tantra, because it allowed me to also realize like, oh, there's like physiological, biological, energetic benefits to me in doing this as well, and still orienting it. It's like it's about her and it's for her. But in the sacred reciprocity of life, we're also receiving something that balances and nourishes our body. And I definitely feel it. Like I feel like the more pussy juice that I get to consume, the healthier, more vibrant and powerful a man I am. And so I'll just like leave you all with that. If you want one last little reason to double down on this, yeah, that's what I would invite.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's a great place to put a cherry on top in this conversation. And yeah, really appreciate all your shares today, Hawks. And thank you to all the brothers tuning in as always, and the brothers who are in our training program and in our community. Thank you guys for making this possible. And I just wanted to just say, when you talked about, connection being at the essence of all of this, um, yeah, like that's really what's at the core of all of this work, is like maintaining long-term relationships is really our intention, to serve men, in long-term relationships where the sex just gets deeper and deeper and deeper over time, and when you mentioned holding space for her emotions or her process or her unfolding like a lotus flower, for many women, they're carrying all sorts of programs and baggage, from society and from conditioning and from ancestral lineages and sexual assault and all these other things. And when we can really show up in this way devotionally to our woman, and especially in long-term relationship, when this can become more and more of a devotional practice, and then we as men take on the responsibility of leadership, of creating these sacred spaces to worship her temple and help open her temple and remember, the beauty of the feminine essence, which has been suppressed, for millennia. Like, this is some super, super deep work. And I just wanted to mention it just in the context of this entire mission, and what we're here to do. And so may this recording, pass through time and space, and may everyone listening in receive this as hopefully tools to support them in just that, and showing up as men of devotion, Men who are centered in our heart and our balls and our cock, and really, may it continue to deepen relationships over time in an age where AI girlfriends and bots, and may we continue supporting the future of the human race and strong families, strong relationships, because that's why we're here. So just wanted to add that in as a bit of a last few words. And yeah, unless there's anything else you have, Hawks, we'll sign this one off and look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Yeah, I could always keep going, but we'll close it off here for now. And yeah, another podcast coming next week. So we'll see what emerges there. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, I trust that there's some part of you that's excited to go put some of this into action. So get after it, brothers.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below how it goes.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Big love, bros.
Bye, guys.